Sadly, the federal government has turned its back on the safety of working women in the Northern Territory by cutting funding to the only NT-wide service providing free advice and advocacy. The NT Working Women's Centre has been supporting women in regional and remote areas to have safer workplaces for more than 30 years. But this government has cut their core funding, with the NT Working Women's Centre facing a very uncertain future from June 30. Recommendation 49 from the Respect at Work report says working women's centres should be supported by the Australian government. Yet, disappointingly, especially tonight, this government is still continuing to let the NT Working Women's Centre close its doors after June, leaving the rest of us stranded. In December 2020, the centre was unsuccessful in securing its core funding from the Fair Work Ombudsman under the Federal Community Engagement Grant. And every 4 years, the NT Working Women's Centre had to go through this funding drama. But this time, the federal government decided to award the funding for the NT to a youth law organisation in New South Wales. Now, no disrespect to this youth law organisation in New South Wales. It no doubt does an excellent job, but it is a hell of a long way from the Northern Territory. So the Northern Territory Working Women's Centre is left without 3/4 of its core funding after 30 years of supporting Territory women. The NT government has provided the centre with short-term funding to cover the shortfall, but this government continues to avoid the responsibilities that it so blatantly needs to give. The fact is, most Australians and Territorians are no different. They spend a third of their lives at work, and the federal government should be prioritising the creation of safe and healthy work environments, including right here in Parliament House. I'm certainly proud to say that workers from the NT Working Women's Centre recently delivered training to senior Labor staffers around identifying and dealing with workplace harassment. But this training is only one facet of their work. In the last 6 months of 2020, the service had 2,093 client contacts, with 157 clients receiving case support. Now, 50% of their clients are from regional, rural and remote locations. And to give you an idea of just some of the work that they do, I'd like to just share the story of one client. We'll call her Maria to protect her identity. Maria was working in the Northern Territory on a visa, and after hearing about her unsafe working conditions, debt bondage and appalling treatment, the NT Working Women's Centre took advice from Anti-Slavery Australia, and the case was referred to the Australian Federal Police. This resulted in a human trafficking investigation uncovering national and international links, exploiting workers across an industry. 8 people in the Northern Territory were removed from forced labour. Without the NT Working Women's Centre, these vulnerable women would still be exploited, harassed and treated appallingly. I urge the federal government, please step up, in particular about our working women's centres across Australia, but especially the Northern Territory Working Women's Centre. We need to make sure they continue well beyond June 30.